Hi, everyone. I'm Thomas Howard. I'm one of the ISE technical marketing engineers in the security policy and access group here at Cisco. And I want to be talking about managing network devices in ISE because that's one of the things that you're probably going to spend a lot of operational time doing is adding, removing, updating your network devices and how to manage them with your policies and things. So these are the different things that we want to talk about today. We will be mostly focusing on RADIUS, just going to touch on TACACS, but all the concepts are all the same. The way you manage it is all the same. We'll be going into, how ISE handles all these different network access devices, and then we'll be getting into what happens if you don't have network devices, how you can use the default network device groups to better manage your policies and things, and then we'll get into some of the settings and actually how you can manage it through CSV, standard delimited files, how you can import and export with those, how you can use non-Cisco network devices, and then some other automations, because again, this is all about a lot of operations and things like that. So I think everybody here knows, ISE is your standard RADIUS TACACS based AAA server for your enterprise and network to help secure it with zero trust in your workplace. But we're really just focusing today on how we're going to work with your network devices in order to define them and use them with TACACS and RADIUS, and what are the operational considerations that you need for working with them, and yeah, RADIUS and TACACS. So the way this is going to work is any network device that supports RADIUS or TACACS is compatible with ISE. We get this question a lot. People say, does ISE support my network access device? And it's really simple. Does it do RADIUS or does it do TACACS? If so, yes, we support it. It's really that simple. When it comes to the number of network devices, we have a page, the cs.co ISE-scale page there, and it talks about the maximum number of network device entries. And the way that's defined is you can do it either by a specific IP address or by an IP address range. And so at first you may think, well, it's a maximum of 100,000 network devices. But if you were to consider that we could do 100,000 IP address ranges, if you figured a Class C network, a /24, then you could actually get more like 25 million if you were to try and maximize all that IP address space and work with those. So it is quite scalable in terms of the number of network devices we can handle. The other thing I'll mention is network device groups. We have a maximum number of 10,000 there. I've never seen anybody come close to that. That would just get really crazy, but if you need it, they're there for you. And then we can organize them into 6 different levels, and we'll give you some examples of what that looks like as well a little bit later. So just a quick recap, the way RADIUS works, because we're actually going to be doing a little bit of packet capturing today, really getting down and helping you troubleshoot, hopefully show you some things maybe you didn't know about ISE. And the way that RADIUS works is you have your subject, maybe this is you trying to connect to the network, and we're going to authenticate you with ISE. And so at first, if it's a wireless connection, we're going to do 802.1x to the network device via layer 2, and then it would initiate a RADIUS connection to ISE. Then when you plug in, that basically sends a link up. That's what triggers the network device to contact ISE. And it does that when it does an EPOL start back to the client. And usually we have what's called a native supplicant in our operating systems that are able to understand EAP packets, the extensible authentication protocol. And all the major operating systems have them. Some of them are disabled by default, so you may need to do some basic configuration. And then we also have our AnyConnect agent, which has a network access module or NAM module that does 802.1x as well, if you need to use that. So if that supplicant is enabled and it understands EAP, it will respond, and that will allow the RADIUS client, which is the network device, to send an access request to ISE on port 1812, on its UDP 1812. And ISE will then go, oh, okay, we have a new session request, so let's go ahead and let's send our certificate back so it trusts us, and hopefully your supplicant has a digital certificate. Either it doesn't check or if it is checking, it has the ISE certificate or any of the certificate authorities in the ISE certificate chain that it trusts, so that it can build a secure tunnel. There's going to be a lot of back and forth going on to negotiate that tunnel. And then that will allow us to securely pass our credentials over to ISE so that they can be checked in a database. Maybe that's the internal database. Maybe that's Active Directory or Azure AD maybe. Then we can run it through our policy, determine what group memberships are allowed, what authorizations are allowed, send a response back. Hopefully it's an access accept. That will then basically tell the network device what privileges are allowed, what VLANs, what ACLs, what security group tags, what session timers, and other attributes. There are other vendor-specific attributes we can send out there to tell it how to allow that user, that device to come into our network. And then, of course, we want to let the client know, congratulations, come on in, get your IP address through DHCP. And once that happens, that is when you will get a RADIUS accounting session start. That gets sent into UDP port 1813. And that is how ISE tracks your licenses, is basically by sessions. So once we get that session start, that increments the license count. And then you have a session that goes on for a period of time until something happens. And that could be the user unplugs, they disassociate from a wireless AP, the session times out, you need to re-authenticate them because the session is no longer valid, or maybe ISE does a RADIUS change of authorization because we thought they were doing something bad on the network, or we needed to change their authorization because they were a guest and they logged into a portal, or their posture went from bad to good, whatever the reason, we can change it. And when that happens, we get a session stop, and that's when we can decrement the license count. So that's basically how ISE works with RADIUS in a nutshell. And all this is documented in the standard RFCs if you are interested in seeing those and learning more about them. And to get down into the details now, we can also take a look at it really more of a packet level. If you do a packet capture, you can see, in this case, I got a Meraki AP sending an access request to ISE. And these are some of the attribute value pairs that you will see the network device is sending into ISE. So you see the access request and you see a bunch of attribute value pairs. And I've highlighted the values of the attribute value pairs so you can kind of see what it is, what's the material that we have to work with in ISE to determine what kind of access request is this? Who's it coming from? Do we know this NAS IP address? Is that defined somewhere? And then we have a message authenticator, which basically is the key that we can use to know that it's someone we can actually trust. It's not someone that's spoofing that NAS. And then in this case, because it's wireless, we get information about the not only the calling station ID, which is the MAC address that is trying to connect, but the MAC address that it's trying to connect to. And we can define that in different ways when it's wireless. We can have the access point MAC address, as well as we try to do the SSID, because that tells us essentially what kind of a service is the endpoint trying to request access to. And that helps us determine, are they allowed to be on this SSID at all? Or what extra checks do we need to do for this particular SSID? So that's basically how that works. And then ISE, once it performs its necessary authentications and authorizations, it can send back a response. In this case, it's an access accept. You can see it's for our user Thomas, and we are doing a couple of different things here. So we are going to do right here. This is basically your VLAN assignment. So when you're doing that, it takes actually a couple different attributes, and actually this right here, this is the named VLAN that we are assigning. So it actually takes 3 different attributes to do a standard IEEE VLAN assignment in RADIUS. And then you'll notice that we also have some vendor-specific attributes down here. Vendors, they're defined. We got like Cisco is number 9. And then we have defined different attributes for different network device capabilities that we can utilize. So you're seeing down here, this is the ability to do MACsec. So if it was a switch, we could tell it, please try to secure the connection. You should secure the connection. We could also say that you must secure it so that you have encryption at layer 2. We also have the ability to do downloadable access control lists, and that's what it's doing there. It's saying, hey, if you don't have this access control list in your memory, come and download it from ISE and apply it. And then we can also do a security group tag assignment. And in this case, it's security group tag number 4. So all these things are the ways that we can assign privileges to that port. Now, if the device is not defined in ISE, it will not receive services from ISE. So you must define it by IP address or even an IP address range, and you must have a pre-shared key that matches. Okay. So with that, we're going to go through a bunch of demos here, and we're going to try and show you exactly how this works, and we'll see how much time this takes. We'll try to be quick about it. So I am going to go to my ISE, and the first thing I want to do is I want to join Active Directory. And I'm doing this because we're going to try and do this a little bit later. And I just want to show you how quick and easy this is. It's one of the first things that a lot of people do. So I'll try and be quick about it. And the reason why is because when it comes to doing group-based access control, Active Directory is one of the main ways that we do it. There we go. All right. Okay, now that we've joined Active Directory, we can get access to the groups inside of Active Directory. So we are going to select the groups, and I'll just go ahead and retrieve them. And there's a few that we want to make it real easy. So I will get I'll get domain admins, domain computers, and domain users, and I could get other groups, employees, engineers, all that good stuff. But that's fine for now. But then the other set of groups that I want to get is for our ISE admin. So I'm actually going to do a mapping where I have created a bunch of ISE groups in Active Directory that map directly to the different ISE admin groups that we have defined in ISE for different privileges. And we're going to use this later on to, there we go. Is that all of them? Yeah. Okay. Looks good. We're going to do it with a ISE network device admin. You're going to see the different privilege level that we can assign to that user. Okay. So now I have all of our groups. And basically by adding them here, what we're doing is we're telling ISE, there's you saw there was 141 groups on that Active Directory server. We only care about these groups. We only care, it's less than 20. And so if we save this, we will now have the ability to use these groups in our policies. So let me show you how that works. Let's go over our policies. And I first wanted to go over and define a new authorization profile because we're going to authenticate our employee Thomas. We're going to, it's going to be an access accept. We're going to be using a Cisco network device profile, but you can see if we had other vendors' products, we could certainly work with those as well. I am going to define, let's see, I have my Meraki AP, and when you do Meraki, it actually uses a group. They have their own group policy that they will assign, and you can assign it through the filter ID, or you can do it through the, you can actually use the airspace ACL name. Actually, let's use airspace ACL. Let's use that one. We have our group. I've already defined employee on my Meraki dashboard. Then we can assign a security group. Well, actually, I'm going to do that later, do that separately. Here's the VLAN. Let's assign the VLAN. We're going to call that data. You saw that we assigned the data VLAN in the other packet capture. Let's do a reauth. Maybe we want to make it 14,400. That's every 4 hours. So maybe twice a day when they're in the office. And we'll do MACsec policy should secure. So not all of these attributes may be understood by all network devices, and that's okay. Uh, Basically, what you can do is if you send more than a particular network device will understand, it should just drop them on the floor. It should just ignore them. Okay. So it's okay if it doesn't understand them. So with that, if you look down here, you can see these are all the different attributes we're going to be sending back with our authorization. And there we go. Okay, now that I've defined that, I took the time to go through that with you because I wanted you to see how we can choose these different options and different combinations, how we can use it with different vendors. And now what we want to do is we want to get into our actual policy set. Now I'm going to go in here and I want to use that authorization profile for my employee, Thomas. I'm going to get my Active Directory domain, and I'm going to match an external group. And those are all the groups that you saw that I added, right? I could match on any of those. But right now, we're going to match on our domain users. So just any one of our users that comes in. If they're in that list, they are an employee. So it's going to apply that authorization profile. And I can also apply a scalable group tag for employees as well. All right. And with that done, I should make this a little bit smaller. There we go. Now it'll fit on the page. All right. So I took the time to go through that because I wanted to show you all how we can build this quickly. Now, I want to do a couple of other little things. So I'm going to go into settings right now, and I want to go into Radius. And because we're doing some testing, I want to capture all of the errors and the repeated tries and things that happen with Radius. So I'm going to disable suppression of repeated client failures as successes because I want to see all the attempts that happen. So normally you wouldn't do this, but I'm trying to, we're trying to do a demo on this, on how Radius works with our network devices. So I want to capture all of those. Okay. So that's one thing. And the next one is we're going to do packet captures. And so for that, we need to go into our maintenance for repositories, and we are going to create a local disk on our ISE node, our local repository. I just do that real quick with a slash. And then we are able to go see that in our local disk management. So this is our local disk that we can now use as a repository, because what we're going to do is we're going to do a packet capture and we're going to store it in that local disk. So the way we do that is we go to operations and look at our diagnostic tools and go to TCP dump. So we're going to add a packet capture for our ISE node. We only have one ISE node and we only have the one Ethernet connection, so we can leave it there. If you do want to filter, you can do some additional filters on it. I'm just going to say this is our Radius packet capture flows. We're going to put it in that local disk repository. I don't care what the file size is, and we'll keep it to one file. And we're going to go, I'm just going to go for 30 minutes. It's not going to last 30 minutes, but I just want to make sure if I goof, I have plenty of time to capture it all in one file. Okay, so with that, let's save it and run it. Okay, so there it is. So if I look at my packet capture, it's running because only stop is allowed. So it's now capturing packets from my flows. So the first thing we want to do now that I've done that is we want to try and go ahead and do some Radius. So you can see that my Meraki has already been testing the connection into ISE. And so that's what this is here. So I want to show you my Meraki AP, and we're going to go into my SSIDs. And I'm going to edit my settings on my ISE Corp SSID. If I scroll down, here are my Radius settings. This is my ISE server, the 1812 port, the 1813 port for accounting. I have my secret that I've put in, and now I can do a test. So I'm going to go ahead and try to connect. So if I put in Thomas and my credentials, this should totally fail. Yep, totally failed. All right. And the reason for that is because, remember, we never defined our network access device in ISE. We have no network access devices defined. And we also did not define a default device. And so what we can do now is let's go ahead and I just want to show you guys real quick, by the way. I'll just show you the live logs to show you how they incremented. So if we go in there, live logs, there we are. Okay, notice it incremented basically 3 more. Okay, and you can see the timing of them. It went basically, it was 1 second and then it waited 2 seconds and it did it again. So the AP is trying. It didn't receive a response within a second from the Radius server, and so it tried again, and then gave up. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back and we're going to define a default network device. Now, what this allows you to do is accept any Radius sessions or TACACS sessions with a single shared secret. Doesn't matter what the IP address is. If as long as the secret matches, we'll talk to it. So I'm going to put in, what are we going to do? That and save it. Okay. Oh, one thing I forgot to do over here is I did want to show you guys what's the error. Okay. So notice that radius request was dropped. So because we didn't have it defined, it dropped the radius request, didn't talk to it at all, and it tells you right here, could not locate the AAA client, the network device, right? And so you probably need to go update your network device list. Something's wrong, right? And if this happens, this means that somebody screwed up. They didn't add a network device, or maybe somebody's trying to simulate one of your network devices and, get access to your network. So be aware of these kinds of things. So what we can do now is I saved it, right? Okay, we're going to go back into our Meraki dashboard and we're going to retry that again. Let's try it again. And this time it's totally going to fail again too. And the reason for this is because when I defined that network device over here, I did the wrong password. I used the wrong shared secret. And what that does is this time, if I look at the message, it still dropped the radius request because the pre-shared keys did not match. But it's telling us, hey, the message authenticator, the key did not match. So something's wrong with your pre-shared key. Go check it out. It's invalid. That's the root cause. So we try to tell you guys, and if you see these kinds of things, I mean, somebody fat-fingered the pre-shared key when they were trying to connect into ISE and set up a switch or an AP or something. That's what's going on there. So I wanted you to be aware when you see these messages, ISE does a pretty good job of telling you what's going on. So when that happens, we need to go back here and let's make sure we type that pre-shared key in correctly. We type it in correctly, not incorrectly. All right. Now let's do another test. And this one should pass with flying colors. All right, there we go. Sweet. Check this out. All right. So remember what I said about Meraki using the airspace ACL for the employee? Right over here, this will allow you to choose which radius attribute you would like to use to map to the Meraki group policy. So it accepted airspace ACL that we configured, and it really didn't care about these. It's like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. Don't need them. So it doesn't pay attention to these. It just drops them on the floor and moves on, and it's still happy. So that's basically how those things work. So the next thing I want to do is let's go to the next level of configuration, which is we've done the default network device. Let's actually define a device with an IP range. I'm just going to call it IP range. And I'm going to do 0.0.0.0.0, and it's going to be a Cisco device. We're going to leave all these things. We don't care about these things right now. We'll be coming back and talking about network device groups. I have my shared secret. I better get this right. Let's just verify that. Yeah, looks good. And if I wanted, I can go through and do some other options. We'll talk about DTLS. TACACS is basically, the same shared secret, really similar. Okay, now if I do this again, let me test again, retry, begin the test. Should work, no problem. Yes, it does. And now if I go back and I look at, here we go. So here's my previous one where I authenticated, and I was able to come in as use my employee authorization that we configured earlier, right? And I came in again just now, and notice that before I was matching on the default network device, but this time I'm coming in and I'm matching the IP range network device, okay? So the idea here is the more specific you are, the better the match is on the network device that you've defined. And so if I go back in and I do one more, and this time I'm going to get real specific. This is my lab. This is my Meraki MR46. And it has an IP address of, if I can type, it's a specific address, and it's a Cisco device. I'm not going to worry about these things. I'm just going to put in my shared secret. Let's verify it. Yep, that's good. And submit it. And now if I run that again, even though that 108060 is encompassed by the 0000, it's more specific, so it should match this time. Yep, it passed. Oh, this one. Let's refresh. Okay, there it is, network device. There was the first the default, then the IP range, and now we're matching the lab MR46. Okay, so you can see ISE is going to try to match to the most specific network device that it finds. So that should help you in defining how you do your network device definitions. And so with that, what we need to do now is let's go check out our packet captures. Yeah, we'll use this. So if we go here, operations, diagnostics, TCP dump, let's check it. Let's stop it. Okay. And then if we go into our repository, maintenance, local disk for ISE, there's our radius. I don't know why it does this. Sometimes it doesn't show the checkbox to download it. I'm just going to refresh the page. There it is. Okay, now I can download that radius.zip and download it to my local computer. And I'm going to go ahead and open this up. I'll open it on the other screen over here. And I got Wireshark I'm opening up right here. All right. Now, hopefully a lot of you are familiar with Wireshark already. And I've got some bookmarks that I've created that lets me filter on different traffic flows. So we're going to go for the radius one. And let's see. Now, I was hoping we'd be able to see the original request where it failed. I'm not seeing those. Radius protocol, AV pair. So let's just start here. So this is where it's sending the access request into ISE. And And essentially what's happening here, oh yeah, here it is. So 75, 76, 78. So what's happening is it's sending one. It doesn't get a response back. So it sends another one and it sends another one. So that's what's happening. And then it does it again, 1, 2, and 3. So that is correct, that it's sending it, but it's not getting any responses back from ISE because the device was never defined. So I just wanted to show you how those attributes I was showing in that previous slide, this is exactly what we're seeing in our packet capture. And if I go all the way down and I look at the access accept, I just want to show you the response coming back from ISE to our AP. It's got an access accept. And if you look here, you can see it's for Thomas. It's for Thomas. And these are those vendor specific attributes that we configured. So I'll just open up some of those and hopefully you can see them. So there's that MACsec link should secure, the security group tag, things like that. So those are how we're able to, if you want to do some troubleshooting, you can do a packet capture on ISE on a specific port and see exactly what's happening with your flows if you want to know what's going on. I ignored some of these other ones because there's just a lot of back and forth for the secure tunnel, but I wanted to show you that initial request and the response. And you, by the way, you can also see there's that other vendor specific one for airspace, the airspace ACL name that Meraki used for its group policy application. So there you go. They've got some Wireshark in there, got some troubleshooting for you guys. I know you guys love troubleshooting, so you got a little bit of Wiresharking in there today. So let's do some more PowerPoint. Let's talk about network device groups. So, so far we've only matched on a specific IP address, but that doesn't really help us when we're trying to do wired, wireless, VPN, or other specific scenarios where we may need to do differentiated policy for not only by type, but maybe by location, or maybe the location doesn't matter. Sometimes location does because, you know, different geographies, different countries have different rules, different policies. Or, you know, sometimes even within the same country, you may have, you know, building to building, floor to floor, you may have different policies, different security levels that you need to authenticate against and account for. And then you also might have different organizations that you service where certain things, they have certain network devices that aren't present in other parts of the organization, like manufacturing versus IT. And so why waste your time trying to authenticate and match on IoT devices for your manufacturing floor in your office space, right? That's just a waste of, you know, authorization rule matching time and CPU cycles. So by filtering and saying, well, you know, all the manufacturing floor switches, they should go onto a different policy set, and the you know, all the laptops and things, they should go through a different policy set when they're coming in from this SSID or this particular switch. And of course, then you can also match against different vendors and models, different devices that way as well. So the way this works is we're going to define network device groups, and ISE comes with just a few by default for all device types, locations, and then you can specify whether or not it's an IPsec device. But what we want to do is we want to take that and we really want to make it interesting. So you have the ability to have network device group levels, up to 6 of them, and that allows you to create a hierarchy so that you can really get specific. You can match on only, you could get all the way down to like the floor level in this case, but you could also just match on a specific country or city or region if you'd like. And of course, you can use not only the default ones that we create, but you can create your own, like departments or organizations or your own regions, and define them however it works for your organization. So with that, I want to get into some CSV importing and exporting. And the reason for that is because this is probably the way you're going to do it at scale. So let me go back into ISE. Let's go to network device groups. And these are the default ones like I was showing you. And if you are going to play with this a little bit, I recommend going ahead and just kind of creating one or a couple of them to see what it would look like. So if we were going to do, you know, the regions like the Americas, and it was going to be based off of all locations, right? Now we got the Americas, and now we want to add the US. So we can add US. And now it's under all locations Americas, and save that. And we could just repeat that ad nauseum, right, with all the different levels that we wanted to do. But that's a lot of work. So instead, what I do recommend is create some like this, and that's going to give you your template for how it looks when you go to do an export. So if we do a CSV export, I get that, and it's going to come up in Excel for us right here. Let's blow this up so you guys can read it. And let's expand these columns so you can read them as well. All right, so you can see what it did when we created these. Basically, there's this notation for the name of using a hash tag as a separator between location, all locations, and Americas. And then as we got into the US, we had that one as well. We didn't do any descriptions, so those are blank. But this is basically the template that we're going to be able to use. And I've predefined some here for network device groups, so check these out. Of course, it opens on my other screen. So what I've done is I've gone through and created a whole bunch of network device groups. And I'll show you how I've done them. So there's lots of different ways you can do this, lots of ways to think about it. So maybe you're trying to do, you're just starting out and you want to monitor only. And so maybe the policies for authorization and monitor versus low impact versus closed mode are different. So you can map switches, or probably not wireless because you really do want to have a secure wireless network. But if you were just monitoring your wired network, you could mark the switches as monitor mode. And that says, hey, if you see one of these switches, always let the traffic flow, don't block anybody. But if they're in the closed group, go ahead and do full enforcement on them. Maybe you want to have different policies by a place in the network. Maybe you want to do it by different device types. You can see how we can create that hierarchy of different device types, wireless, wired. There's the Americas I was trying to show you guys, going down to the floor levels in San Jose. And then maybe you've got different operational zones. So I just created these generic zones for you. Maybe you are a university and you've got all these different departments that you need to work with. Or maybe you're a hospital and you've got a whole bunch of different departments that you've got to work with, and you need to do enforcement on those devices in different ways. So these are just examples for you. But what I want to show you is if we import them, let's go back to ISE, import, browse. And if I import where's my network access devices? CSV. What am I missing? Those are my scripts. Oh, it's in the files folder. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I put them in the files folder. Okay, here they are. Network device groups. Let's open those up. And let's go ahead and we can just overwrite what's already in there and import. So it's going to go through, and there's a couple hundred of them in there. It goes pretty quick. Oh, whoops. I missed the Z3. That's okay. So it's going to go through and do this. That when we're going to do the network access devices as well, and that goes a lot faster. One reason to do this is it's always a good idea to make a backup of these. And I'm going to show you why. We've actually had a pretty nasty bug when you go to delete network access devices. And ISE actually went through, and even though you're only deleting you were filtering, it would actually delete all the network access devices and cause some pretty nasty downtime for some customers. So I recommend that you go ahead and make backups of your network device groups, because you can very quickly re-import network device groups and network devices just by doing CSVs. It's a good insurance policy if something like that were ever to happen. And always take backups as well. You never know when something's going to happen. So now you can see we've got locations, we got the enforcement, medical, operations, pins, school or university. And you can also view it not only by the hierarchy, right? So we did that hierarchy with San Jose and the different buildings and the floors and all that kind of crazy stuff. You can also just do a flat table, and that's going to let you see it where you can see kind of that hierarchy horizontally. And you got to change the paging here. And now you can see all those different ones that we created. Okay. So there's your network device groups. Let's go do the same thing for network devices. So again, I recommend doing the same thing. Create a couple network devices, export it, understand what the format is on those, and then you can import them back in. And so my network devices are here. We open it up, and I'm just gonna, yeah, we'll overwrite. I feel lucky today. Oh my goodness. So you see, I forgot to create some network device groups. So I was very unlucky today. Um, but you could go back in and fix it on those, not a problem, and then re-import it, and you're off and running again. So now we showed you the network device groups. If I go to network devices, here's all of my network devices that I was just able to add. Have all their IP addresses, oops, and profiles. If I want to sort, I can do it by clicking there. I can see all my lab devices up here. I can see where they're located. If I want to sort by location, I can sort by type. If I want to filter, I only want to look at my lab devices. I can do that. I only want to filter on, I only want to see the things. Maybe I'm the admin for San Jose. I only want to see San Jose, right? I can do all that very quickly and easily. And then if you want to delete, you can always delete all, or you can select a specific one and delete that. Okay. So that's how you can do it. Then I want to get back to the slides, and I want to show you slides here. All right. So when you do the import, one thing to note, I played with this a little bit, and UTF-8 files are not supported. For some reason, ICE doesn't understand the character set. It looks the same to me whenever I cat the file or look at it as text. But if you do a save in Excel, Excel gives you that option to do just save as standard CSV or save as UTF-8 CSV. If you do UTF-8, ICE will throw you this weird error that says it doesn't understand the characters. It's a UTF-8 problem. So just be aware of that. If you see that, it's probably the UTF-8 issue. And then I was telling you about that really nasty bug that has affected some of our 2.7 patch 5, 3.0 patch 4, and 3.1 unpatched. So if you basically what happens is if you filter on your network devices and then you delete some of those, it basically will wipe out all of your network devices, not just the one you selected, but all of them. It's a JavaScript bug, really nasty. And I'm on 3.1 patch 1, so I was able to select and delete, and it didn't affect me. So I, always recommend getting the latest patch, guys. And then the other thing is because it's a JavaScript issue, you'll want to clear your browser cache when you do that as well. And if you are like, how did I not know about this, Cisco? Well, one way you can do it is try to get notifications. And so if you don't know about this service, I recommend that you log in to the notifications, and you have the option to not only find about the latest software updates releases, but you can also subscribe and get bug updates, patch releases, and things like that as well. So that's a good option. Hopefully, it's not going to be perfect, but it hopefully will help with some bugs. At least you'll know about them. The other thing I wanted to share with you guys is DTLS. So by default, Radius is completely unencrypted. The only thing that gets encrypted effectively is your password and pre-shared key. And that's because, this was developed, Radius is like pushing like 30 years old now. And so back then security wasn't the concern that it is today. So Radius and TACACS are unencrypted basically by default. And you saw how we were able to look at all those attributes in the Radius packets, right? You could see the network device IP address. You could see the SSID names. You could see all that. And so if an attacker wanted to basically understand what's going on in your network, they sniff the radius, they could get a sense of, oh, these are all the network devices. These are the kinds of requests people are making. These are the usernames. I can go try to do credential stuffing attacks on the usernames, right? So those are some of the things that people can do. And so if you're concerned with that, you may want to use DTLS to secure your RADIUS and TACACS traffic. So to do that, we have a document that tells you how to do it. The interesting thing is when you go in, and just like we were configuring the RADIUS shared secret, if you enable the DTLS required option right here, okay, if you enable that, basically it says it will only allow DTLS for this network device. Okay. If you uncheck it, you have the option of doing unencrypted on port 1812 or DTLS on port 2083. But if you check it, you can't do unencrypted. You must do encrypted the whole way. And the other interesting thing is that the shared secret must be radius/DTLS. You're basically doing mutual certificate-based authentication with DTLS, and so you don't need to worry about the shared secret, but just use that standard shared secret, and it'll be fine. And then when you go to configure it, this means that in iOS devices, you're going to have to configure trust points with the certificates that it's going to trust, and the certificate for the network device itself. So in this case, I have like a 9300. I would configure a trust point. I left out all the certificate gobbledygook from the terminal. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to come in and it's very similar to what you would do for your Radius server, only now your key again is Radius DTLS. You're using port 2083 instead of 1812, 1813, and you need to define these trust points. And that's how it knows who to trust and which certificate to use to share with ISE to secure the connection. And then you'd want to do that for, any other ISE servers that you have as well. Then non-Cisco network devices. So I told you earlier that ISE is a RADIUS and TACACS server. We support the standards, but we still get the question, does ISE support my network device? Because they forget that people still do protocol-based interoperability. What we do is we publish a network device capabilities document for Cisco devices. We used to do it for third-party devices, but we can't track. We have plenty of devices at Cisco to track. We can't track them all for everybody. So if you have Cisco devices, you want to know what capabilities can they do. We have this nice table that tells you. And if you look through, you basically see you see check marks everywhere. So everything's supported. You get in a couple, that doesn't quite work there. And it looks like guest originating URL is not missing from there. And it looks like, on the lower end switches, the 2960s, they can't do TrustSec. And it looks like we may have some issues down here with probably ACLs, if I had to guess. And it's, again, layer 2 switch. It's not going to do layer 3 ACLs. So that's why some of those things aren't quite going to work perfectly. So all you need to do is check with your vendor to see what do they support on your particular hardware, on your particular software. What do they do? And when we talk about this, these are the kinds of features that we look for to do modern network access control on switches and wireless access points or wireless LAN controllers. So, the basics are, AAA, you got to be able to do .1x and MAC authentication bypass. That's required, right? But it would be nice if you can do VLAN assignment, not required. ISE can do all these things, but now it's really a matter of, can the network device do it? Does it support ACLs? I don't know. Does it do fully qualified domain name based ACLs? I don't know. But sure is nice when it comes time to do things like, BYOD, posture, redirection. Sure is nice to have that FQD and ACL so that you can go to the Google Play Store or go to the Apple App Store, iTunes Store, and you don't have to type in every single IP address around the world for all those stores. You can just say, iTunes.apple.com or play.google.com. That makes it really simple when you can do that. So it's not required, but it sure is nice. I consider it a must-have. And then radius change of authorization, not required, but I tell you what, it sure is nice. And same thing with scalable group tags. You don't need to do software-based segmentation, but it's a nice to have. And obviously, if you are trying to do TrustSec, yes, you do need SGT capabilities. So depending upon what you're trying to do, and notice that, look at here, right? Like if you're trying to do any of this other stuff, if you're trying to do posture, guest, if somebody goes to a web auth, you're going to redirect them to a portal. Then once they authenticate, now you need to change the authorization. So you need URL redirection. You need to limit where they can go with ACLs. You need to be able to do change of authorization, right? All these things become very, very important. And so if you don't have Cisco devices, you need to be asking your vendors about this or consider upgrading, right? And then I want to repeat that if you have a network device, you can define it not only as a Cisco device, we have these other built-in profiles for some of these other popular brands. And if you want to customize it, if you don't see one that you like, or maybe it's not quite working for the latest version that vendor has, you can go in and there's the default ones. But if we take a look at someone like Aruba, what's happening in here is we define some basic flows, some basic things that you can do, and something like permissions. So when we go to set a VLAN, you saw earlier I was using the IEEE definitions for how you set a VLAN. I used 3 different attributes to do it. For whatever reason, Aruba chooses not to do it that way. They choose to use their own vendor-specific attributes instead of the IETF 802.1x attributes for VLANs. That's okay. We support it. And so you just have to specify, those attributes that they require. And if you do an ACL, there's the Aruba attribute for the ACL. Similarly, for redirection, they support redirection on their wireless controllers, but the way that they do redirection, they have some different properties in the URL redirect. And so you just need to make sure that you plug in those values. They're a little bit different from iOS, but we support the ability to redirect. And so whatever vendor you use, you'll need to go in and change them if you don't see them supported here. And then if you want to know how to do that, we have a document for how to create those network access device profiles. And if you want to know about those VSAs, we have, if you look at the Radius RFC, it talks about vendor-specific attributes. They're perfectly normal to do that. I showed you the ones for Aruba. And we have some of those dictionaries already populated inside of ISE. But let's say that you have another vendor that you use. I picked Free Radius, and this is what that dictionary looks like for Free Radius. If I want to go ahead and import that into ISE, what I can do is I can come in, and if I go to policy, elements, dictionaries, and I look under system, ISE has a lot of dictionaries for a lot of attribute values, right? I scroll down to radius, I open that up, and there's radius vendors. There's those vendors I was just talking about, right? But free radius isn't in there. So if I want to add free radius, can I just import it? Oh, just import. Yeah, that's what I want to do. I don't want to create it manually. That's too much work. Open it there, import it. It won't take a couple of minutes. It'll go fast. Maybe it will take a couple minutes. There we go. All right. Ta-da! Free radius. There it is. They've been imported. There's all the attributes that we can now use as part of free radius. Look at all those attributes. Isn't that beautiful? And now, if you were to go to your policies, or you were to go to your network access devices, you'd be able to use those attributes. All right. I got to pick up the pace here because we're right at almost the top of the hour. So what I want to do is remind you that we have radius dictionaries. There's a wonderful document that Catherine McNamara put together where she talks about all those attributes. I've put them over here. I don't know, she must have spent a weekend doing this. She just found all these crazy vendors I'd never heard of, but they all have attributes, vendor specific attributes for Radius. So if you go, you can download, if you have any of these devices, you can go download those dictionaries like I just did and import them into ISE and use them. So last thing, real quick, controlling network device admin access. What we want to do is basically limit what our network device admins can do in our ISE. And so remember earlier how I came in and I admin access right there. I added my Active Directory. I am now going to use my Active Directory groups as my source for my admin groups. And if I come in here and I go to my network device admin, I'm going to map it to that external Active Directory group. So where are my network device admins? Here they are. And if I want to add more than one, I can, add multiple groups from AD, but I only need the one. And I save that. All right. And now I can log out. And I can log in using AD. So network device admin, and when I log in, I now am a network device admin. I don't have the full ISE super admin privileges. So what that means is when I go look at my menu system, policy is gone, right? And I have some basic operations to still go look at live logs, but all my other administration options are gone. All I can do is play with my network devices, right? I can go, oh, why did it do that? This is taking too long. I got to hurry up. But anyway, you get the idea. It limited my network access, so I could only control network access devices. So that was the network administrator RBAC. Automation with Ansible. I just wanted to mention to you guys that we have REST APIs that you can use with Postman, or you can use Ansible, you can use Terraform, and you have the ability to provision these things. So if you want to do this with Ansible modules and scripts, you have the ability to do that. We also have lots of webinars that we've done. I love the comments that you guys give us about these webinars. I do read every single one of them. So thank you for that. But I do see comments from you saying, hey, a webinar on this topic would be really nice. And we just did that topic like a month or two ago. So I encourage you to go look at our YouTube channel, take a look at those videos, take a look at the playlist, see what other webinars we've done. They probably touch on some of the topics that you're looking for. So I encourage you to go look for those. There's a bunch of other resources that Rico's going to post in the chat for you. And these are some of the other documents that I've mentioned today and gone through with you. So with that, one last thing. For those of you that stuck around, we're going to be doing an ISE 3.2 open beta. If you're interested, go to this URL, put your email in, and when it's about ready to start, we're going to send you an email to notify you that you can come and register for it. And then hopefully in mid-May, we're actually going to release ISE 3.2 beta to you, and you can go play with it in your lab. So Rigo, any outstanding questions?
Yeah, excellent presentation, Thomas. Thank you so much. So I am looking at our Q&A panel here, and I do see just a few questions remaining here that I think we can address before we wrap up, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
So first question here is, would it be possible to see how to check for Windows operating system as well within the ISE policy? And one other check would be filter endpoint based on organization units in Active Directory.
Okay. So first of all, Windows devices. Yes, you can check for Windows profiles, endpoint profiles in the authorization rule. You can absolutely do that. Probably a better, faster way to do it is just to authenticate your machine. that has been provisioned with a certificate from your Active Directory domain controller, then you know that it's been provisioned by your Windows machine. Sorry, it's been provisioned by your controller. It's faster to do that rather than having to wait for the profile. But you can also do a profile. There's no reason why you can't do an authentication for it and then do a profile as well. And then the other one was about organizations with Active Directory. So you can absolutely do organization based Active Directory groups, but you can't filter your network devices by those. It doesn't work that way. You can only filter your users and devices with Active Directory groups. That's why we have network device groups in ISE so that you can filter your network device groups that way. Hopefully that takes care of it, Rico.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Thomas. And the last question here before we wrap up, does the packet capture negatively affect the processor of the ICE server?
There is some overhead to it, but it shouldn't be too bad. Obviously, I was using a lab setup, and the system isn't under a lot of load right now. Um, so I'm not aware of the packet capture taking that much CPU. You could run it and then see what the CPU is on the dashboard. Um, that's one way to do it, but I don't think it's going to take a lot. Packet capture shouldn't take a lot, and you can do the
Perfect.
filtering too. So yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much, Thomas.